Good morning. And today is Thursday, so therefore it's Acumatica training class day. And today we're going to be doing a training class on Report Builder. That's the tool within Acumatica that allows us to change up paper reports, what I call paper reports. Describe what I mean by that. So, what are we going to be talking about today? First things first, of course. For those that have been here before, you know this spiel. Weekly training classes covering different topics are held every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Those can be found, this schedule can be found at acumaticaengineering.com/acumatica-training. These are for central nervous systems clients only, so you can't Google uh, the site. It is something that's been um, given to your organization, and so therefore you're here, so you know about that. If you have other people that may benefit from these training classes within your organization, please do share this link and have them join us for these weekly training classes. Log into the site, the schedule's out till the end of October, and select the classes that you'd want to attend. Every class will be recorded and available to you on demand. Again, at acumaticaengineering.com/maintenance-classes. These classes, like this one today, will be recorded and put up onto the site within a day or so of the class, so you can review that. Or in case you've missed a class that you wanted to go to, but you didn't, yeah, work gets in the way and couldn't get to it, you can view that. The benefit of actually attending one of the classes is you can you can ask questions, have those answered during the class. So it's you have some interactive component there. Whereas if you're viewing it on demand, you get to miss out on that. So today we're doing the reports using the report builder. This is different than the GI class that I did a couple of weeks ago. That is generic inquiries within the system that you pull up. These are um, actual reports in the report section of Acumatica. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Next week, so normally on the schedule we have the 23R1 launch. So as some of you may know, Acumatica has two major versions released in March and in October. And so they do have a launch event for both of those. Although this year, I'm not sure if they're actually going to hold that. So we'll have to see what happens in the next few days, and maybe we'll just talk about what new things um, are coming through on the R1 version of Acumatica. We were at Summit, Central Nervous Systems was there, and so potentially we want to talk about that if there's not going to be an actual Acumatica event for that. And then on March 30th, Dean is going to be doing bank deposits and funds transfers and talk about that piece on March 30th. So let's continue on for this session here. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Please submit questions using the question box on the meeting that we have, that we're on. I'll try to answer as many as we have time for. Video with answers on our blog. For those that we can't get to, we will reach out to the person that asks the question, but also we want to make sure that they benefit others and put that on our blog. Do check out our blog at acumaticaengineering.com/engineering-blog. So what's on the agenda? Well, there's only one thing, which is report builder basics. So we just got to go through and talk about report builder, look at it, look what it does in Acumatica, and that's the intent of today's session, is to be able to just go back and forth and be able to see that um, report builder and build out a report. So I've got that up on my screen here, which is Report Builder and Acumatica. So let's go through some of the basics that we have. So I'm in Acumatica, and so what's the difference between uh, an inquiry and a report? So one that I want to touch on is, or a couple that I want to look at is things that are listed as either as a printed form, like I have here. So this is a quote or a change order or a pro forma invoice. We're going to go into that because that's where mainly the work is done. But we also look at reports, and we'll look at a AR report um, under the report section. But these are what I consider paper versions. So that's something that does pop up on screen, may have drillability on them, but really we export PDF because it's similar to something that you have in legacy systems. You print the report and it actually prints out on a printer. Same sort of concept um, here. So let me, for example, I have an AP aging report. And so the AP aging report is made up of some report parameters, some sorts. Uh, so when I run this report, as you can see, it looks like a piece of paper. So that's why I call this a paper report. It may have the ability to drill down, but this is a paper report. So we go into this and look at this and potentially make some changes to these reports and show you how to do that, those basics. So in order to do that, you need a thing called Acumatica Report Designer. Now, heard rumors that maybe by the end of this year, um, this will be built into Acumatica in the cloud, so you don't actually have to download um, um, an invoice for a program for this. It is won't be a standalone program. It will be part of Acumatica. You when you log into Acumatica, you're able to go and make those changes from within the website. But right now, can't do that. So I have downloaded this, and if you need a copy, do contact us. We'll be happy to send you a link to get you um, this program. Program only works in Windows, so if you're running on a different platform like Mac OS, like I have on my system, I have to run this on a virtual machine so that I can run this in Windows. But that does not matter, so that's what I have here. So in order to make changes to a report, you're going to pull it down from the cloud. So you're going to open from server, um, and we're going to pull up CMS. Do I have so the URL? So what I need is to pull down a URL. So I need to put in so HTTPS. Okay, so I'm going to put in what the site is, so where you actually log in. You got to put in your username, and if you've got multiple tenants, then you need to put an @ sign in front of it, and then or after your name, and then the name of the tenant. In my case here, it's I'll have one one tenant in my demo box, and then putting in the password. And then you're going to select the report to load. If you don't know the report name within Acumatica, so this is the report name. So in this case, it's AP631,000, or if you click on Tools, it will tell you the screen AP631,000. So that's what you're going to put in. You could do load reports, and then it will show all the reports on here. But I find that that's something that makes it difficult to find things. So um, looking it up for what you need to do in Acumatica is the one. So first one I'm going to pull up is my pro forma invoice. So that's PM642,000, and I'm going to click on OK. And it didn't like that because I need to be in as admin. And so there we go. So it's pulled up the guts of the invoice. So if I go into projects and use my pro forma invoice, so here it is. So here is with data in it, and here it is without. So this is how it's driven. So if we go through and do some matching up, and let's talk about the various pieces that we can have here. So top section here, we've got headers and footers. So the first one here is this is the report section. So if we want something to show up on the report as a whole, we can put that in section up here. And then next I have grouping and header for the invoice. So if I bring this back, here's my header of the invoice. This has only got one page, but if I have multiple pages, this would be the one that we have on the front page, which has the important information, including invoice numbers, dates, due dates, etc. So this is the section. We can collapse the section, or we can increase it, add things to it. Within the section I have up here, so I have the logo that's pulling up here. So it's pulling from the system. I can make an adjustment to the logo, for example, like adjust it to make it more to the left. Notice that is right in the middle, so I'm going to move it more to the left like that, and have that there. Then I have boxes. So this is a text box, and in the text box it has a whole bunch of information. How do we put in that information? We'll talk about that shortly. Then I have the header, which is again another text box, which just has information in it. It doesn't point to um, a field in the database. And then some more labels and some fields in the database, so it matches it up. Once I have my header, then I have different sections, and we'll talk about grouping in a bit. Then I have got details, and I've got summary, and some good stuff here. So let's start off with again going to the basics. So this is the structure. I've made an adjustment to that field, which is my logo. If I click on the preview button at the bottom, notice now this is moved across to the left, where it was to where it is. So I might want it a little bit more. I can do that. So when I click on that particular thing here, notice here I have a whole bunch of different information. One of them is what am I pulling? So the logo is actually being pulled from Acumatica because we uploaded the logo. The logo was updated in under configuration, companies. let that load. I'll show you in a second. So it's pulling it from Acumatica, and the sizing here says due to scale. So we do have other things that we can put in there, which is auto size, scale, fit. So if I choose fit, then it'll fit in this box. And if we do a preview, there we go. That's probably what we want. This is where we probably want it. The next section over here, as I mentioned, is pulling some data. So if we go into um, this field here, I've got an if statement, and it's pulling in information to put in there. So this is branch information. So because in Acumatica, I can have the same thing running across multiple companies, multiple branches. And as such, by doing that means that I needed it to be dynamic depending on where I'm pulling this or running this information. Okay, so it also has things like this BR with the squiggly brackets, and what that does is put a break, so you have line over line. So if we preview that, see what that looks like. So notice that it's pulling from the branch address that we have in the system, and the website. So if I'm looking at this here, so I've got it's pulling from products because I know that, and I've got branches. So I've got this one here. So this is where I'm in, and it's at Vancouver. So that was my branch name, and so that's where it's pulling. It has a Washington State address, um, but the branch is in Vancouver. So that's where it's pulling this information. So if I change this information in here, it will change in the report. So again, we don't want to hard code this in here because otherwise people will have to go in every time and make changes to the template. And again, if we hard code it, it means that it doesn't become dynamic. So that's the benefit of having things in here, pulling things from Acumatica. Then we have dates and due dates and terms. So these ones are simple ones. It's actually pulling from from a particular field. And then we have a build to and ship to. So this is my top section, which is my header section. So I want to talk about now a couple of things here. So in a standard report, you've got the details, so the detail lines, and then you have headers and footers where you can have information like this in the header section. Footers would be summing up totals or amounts and having those on the footer section. In this case, also we can have totals for the invoice, which we definitely want. But within that, we can have other sections. And here's an example, one that um, does show that, which is I have, in terms of invoicing, I can have progress billing, so fixed fee invoices. And so I have a section that says fixed fee. So this is also a header section. So this is an invoice header section, and then the next set of data, which is whether it's a time and material in our case, or whether it's a progress billing. So we've got this thing called a section at the top here, whether it's visible, and if it's visible, do we have there may be an expression that says if it meets these kind of things, then show it, otherwise don't show it. So this is looking for progress billing. So if it's progress billing and there's no retainage turned on, show this. If either of those two things are false, then it will skip the section. And so this section does the same thing, but in this case, again, progress billing, we've got transactions for progress billing, and we have retainage turned on. So that section will turn on. This section, of course, will be off. Same thing with time and material. We're doing the same thing, again, retainage on and off. and whether it's time and material or not. So these things turn on and off. So we have different header information that we want on the invoice. Again, it's dynamic, so it doesn't mean that we have to have multiple templates to go across and define how we want things to show, because it's all dynamic. So depending on the type of invoice we select, it will know and select what we want. And so that's what we want to have show up, which is cool. So that's the header section. So these are the things that will show up basically once up on top. Then we have the details. And so I got the details, so line by line. If I want to show that on the invoice, and we'll see the example again. So this is on the progress billing. Again, I have something that says show something or don't show it. So retainage or holdbacks, whether they're on or off, and whether it's time and material or progress billing, turn these sections off. And then I come to the footer section. So I don't have any specific footer sections other than the invoice. So I don't have a footer for progress billing or time and materials, but I could. Let's say if I was going to do a total at the bottom of my invoice, then that would be something that I put it in here. So if I come back into here, just as a visual, this is my top section. This was my invoice header. Then I have this, which is, so the invoice that I chose here, this is progress billing with retainage. And so that's why these items show up. And I have then the details with retainage showing up here. If I wanted to have like a total for total revised amount, then I would have that in the footer. So in the retainage section, because I've got progress billing with retainage, and I could have sums at the bottom. If I did that there, then those sums will show up at the bottom here. And then last year's invoice footer grouping by invoice with retainage or without, and so that's that section that shows up at the bottom. And then the last thing for the invoice is to put a page number on there, page 1 of 1, page 1 of 2, etc., 2 of 2. So that's the basis of this particular invoice. Quickly, let's talk about groups. So in order to flip them back and forth and have the headers and footers, we need to have some grouping. So we got a group invoice, so header of group invoice. And so what that allows us to do is set up a grouping. And so this grouping for the invoice means that it's going to group it by invoice number. So in this case, it's the pro forma reference number, but it would be same for an invoice. Would that be an invoice number? So now that means we're going to get one report per invoice number. So it's not going to just cascade and show us multiple invoices on one report. So that's what that allows us to do on that section, and also hold that information. Then next is our sections that we've seen, which is my progress billing with or without retainer, time and materials with or without. So if I go into the progress billing and drill into that, tells me, okay, so group it by type, and that's what that's doing by type. So type P or type T, and then with retainage, again, it's doing the same thing. So these ones are exactly the same. So how does it differentiate? Well, it doesn't differentiate here. It's breaking it up into the 4 sections or subsections underneath the invoice. And it is that visibility that we saw earlier that determines whether what we show. So we have 4 options. If we did not have any visibility holdbacks, it would show all 4. But we want it to turn on and off, and that's what it does. For those of you that are used to other report writers, very similar in the way that it acts. Now this is advanced, so I'm going to just really touch on it so we understand how it works. So this report, if we go into the build schema, is pulling information from 12, 13 tables here. And so they're being, they have a relationship. So there's a query that's run based on that. We have parameters, and we'll come touch on that shortly. We have filters. We have sorting and grouping. So here's the grouping that we just saw, but can also be viewed from here. So this is where the information comes across into from the tables. Again, that's more expert and relationship. So these are more expert items that we're seeing there, but that's how each of these fields and different items from the fields from our company information up here to the customer's information here to the shipping information that would probably come from either the customer or the project, pro forma information from the pro forma table, and some other information from the project table that would be all grouped together nicely to give us the information that we're looking for. So, um, this may look hey, it's neat. I have all that information, but there's a bunch of things that went on in the background to get us to that point. So again, that's more of an expert piece that we'd go into the group in the connections between the tables. So back to my invoice here. So if I go back to my front page, notice I have a report parameter. And so it's asking for a reference number so that when you run this report, you're running it for one reference number. Because again, we said we have a header. The header section is on a grouped by reference number. So therefore, we need to input that reference number. And so we need that. So if I go back into my schema here and go into my parameters, this is where I've told it, this is my code for my reference number. This is what I show on screen as my reference number. Up here is how it pulls the reference numbers within the system. And is it required? Is it visible, etc.? Because you may pass some variables sometimes, and you may not want to make it visible. In this case, this is visible. And then in the filter, we tell it, okay, so filter this report based on the reference number equaling the parameter, and we only want the stuff um, that's good. So if anything was corrected, so if we have a pro forma, then that was adjusted, it does keep the pro forma, the old version in the system, but only show me the active one. And so that's why we've got this in here. We've got operators to say both this and this. You could have an or in here. So if it was an either or situation, you could put an or. So it would, if either one of the two things were met, um, filters were met, then it would show up. So that's how we get the parameters to show up on here. Okay, so that gives me my parameters. So let's look at a different one. So I want to look at the project quote one. So the project quote is PM 6604510. So let's go have a look at that. Actually, let's look at it on the screen. Got a bunch of things that are in here. No, this is very different than the standard that you get with Acumatica, but let's go look at those pieces just so we can um, see these here. So that's for when I want to make changes. I said no. So let's pull up the next one, which is PM 604510. Go. So pull that up. And so again, if I look at it here, I have a bunch of information. So let's go look at groups. So I've got project quote, just like I had for my invoice. So I have a quote basis, then I have a revenue section. So if I click on this, it's looking based on the quote ID, and then I have another grouping, which is empty. So I have a grouping in here that's actually doing nothing for me. Anything extra, it's just an extra line that I have here. So top section, I have um, these items here. So I've got some header revenue that's um, that potentially will populate, but in my case it does not. So it's actually um, false because we're not using cost codes. Again, built dynamically. Over here we've got some static. So this is static information, not pulling from the system. It is put in here. So if we change rates, we need to come in here and change that. We've got pricing notes over here, which is again static information that's not pulling anywhere from the system. Then I have a detail section and a total, which matches up with what I have here. So while I'm in here, let me make a couple changes here just to give you an idea of some of the things that we can um, do. For example, on this one here, I want a dollar sign to show up. So I can come in here and format um, by tapping something in here or put in the format like I want a dollar sign, and then I'm going to have a comma, two of those, and then something like that. So I'm going to add this to my formatting for the amount. And so if I've done that, I'm going to preview. So this starts to pull different uh, quotes in the system. So sometimes this preview, you don't get what you um, want to see. And in those cases, we want to save it to back to the server so we can look at it on the screen in Acumatica. When I do that, I want to um, put in a version. So we'll say added dollar sign. We'll save it as a new version. So we're not overriding the old one in case we need to come back. So click on OK. I'm going to come back here and notice that this is report version. So I'm going to refresh this. So if I've done this right, I should see added dollar sign and today's date attached to it. So when I run this, and I ran this for, let's run it for, there you go. Notice that we have a dollar sign attached to it, whereas before we didn't. Let's say I didn't want to, found that that was not what I wanted. I could go back to this, activate this, run the report, dollar sign con. So it gives me that flexibility to be able to um, uh, make those changes and see them. So back to the dollar sign. other things that I can do here. I have sizing and style names. If I go into the custom data here, I have things like, it's right justified. I can make it bold and italic. For the text, I can do things with the background if I wanted to. So that is the case with, one of these ones here in blue. Notice that it's colored. But if I go into custom data and look at the background um, for that particular field, I have things that I can set up in the background here. Same thing with edges. So I can select and put a box around it, and for padding. So in this case here, there's a padding of 8 to the right, so it doesn't butt up against the left margin. It has 8 pixels moving to the right. So I can make those kind of changes on there. And also add in formulas. So um, we saw that in the address information that we had before. Can also do something like this here. So what this does is I've got a label here. So by putting in single quotes, that gives me my label. And then I'm pulling in from one of the tables that are in my join, I'm pulling the currency ID for the quote. So I'm putting a plus in between the labels. So this is a label, putting in the field, and then I have another plus to close this off. So label to give me um, what this looks like on screen, which is here's my quote total. USD is the dynamic field, depending on the invoice, and then the bracket to end it. So again, I'm controlling that um, with formulas. On this side, it's just pulling a straight um, value. So in this case, it is the currency amount rather than the so if the quote is in US dollars, but my books are in Canadian dollars or vice versa. By selecting amount versus curry amount, the curry amount will be the functional currency of the transaction. Whereas if I change this to amount, this would be my amount. So if this was in a foreign currency, that would cause me a problem. If we don't have that issue, leaving it as currency amount, well, home and currency will be the same. For those that don't have currency issues, you can select either and it would work. So again, these are different fields that we're pulling off of my line. Then at the bottom here, I have different signatures that I may want to have as a sign off. So I want to go into purchasing now, and I want to see the payables, and I want to see the AP aging. So let's look at AP aging. So AP aging is AP 631,000. Let's go pull that up. Okay, so now that I have my report here, let's go through what we've um, talked about. So here's my AP aging. So I've got some parameters here. So let's go look at my parameters, and so this is where we get the information, report format, um, whether it's detailed or in summary. So that's where that's coming from. Then I have my company or branch, my vendor class, vendor. Um, so if I've got projects turned on, I potentially have project ID turned on, um, date, and then what do I do with prepayments? So these are the things that I have that may or may not show, and then this is how I filter it. And that magic gets us to be able to have different selections. So now I can go run this, and this is what I get. So this is at the summary level. So that means on the report, we have to define, because it's only one report, sections that show up as a summary, sections that show up as a detail. So let's look at a grouping. So group by vendor, group by project, um, and in the Acumatica you have, especially on the distribution side, supplied by vendor, and then group by document. So AP documents, so bills, being the lowest level. So if I go into one of these, so this is grouping by vendor account ID, so the vendor name. Um, so I have both of them showing up here. So then now I have those grouped nicely and summed up together, and so on down the line. So we've seen that. We don't need to hash through that. So now I got my headers. So got a header section up here. I have another section that gives me my uh, aging and what that looks like. And then I have a third section here that shows up something different, right? So header section 1 shows up for everything. So whether you've selected detail or summary, this will show up. Next section says the format is equal to S. So therefore, if we select summary, show this. Summary, show this. That's what it's doing. If I do detail, notice that that's not in the same order. This is showing up after our vendor. So back to here, so this, if we're running a summary, this goes on top. In the detail, it's not running by summaries, therefore this is not shown. This goes on top. So format is not equal to S, show this. Here's my vendor. And there's my vendor right there. Notice the background of this is a very light purple. You may not be able to see it on your screen, but if you look carefully, it's light purple, and that's what reflects here, the very light purple. Okay, so I've got that, and then I got a bunch of other things here that again turning on and off depending on um, what type of um, setup I have. So I'm gonna skip through those ones as optional. I want to come back into here, which is this section here. Section 2 has the vendor information and your past due type of thing. Down here, this is for the detail section. So my detail section, which is this document type reference, that's what I want there. In the summary section, I don't have document type. I just have vendor and vendor name. So vendor and vendor name, whereas the detail has a document type, reference number, branch, due date. And so that's how I differentiate. Now, if I look on the right, it says format is not equal to S. So I'll print this if you've selected detail or detail with retainage. Remember, we had multiple options here, and if I click on a pencil, detail retainers. Therefore, what it's doing is saying does not equal to summary, show it. So regardless of whether you have retainers or not, it will show. So let me put this back to detailed. Okay, and then in the detail section is giving me the information for each of the transactions that I have. And if I have multiple transactions, like here, I've got 3 of them, there'll be 1, 2, 3, giving me a total. So that's that section. Then notice that I have a vendor total. So for example, here I have um, document types. This is a debit adjustment. So this is a vendor credit that we received from our vendor. And so that's why it's showing up as a negative here. And we have a vendor total that sums that up. So we talked about it right from the get-go that that kind of stuff is all done through the footer. And we should be able to see that. So this is my detail information. And now I have my footer information bottom. So if I go down here, here's my vendor totals. So this is what's showing up. So on the detail side, show this vendor total. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing a total there. And then if I go to the last page, I should see a company total. And there's my company total. And that is pulling. Now this particular thing has a bunch of um, variables that have been built in, and that's why it has a dollar sign attached to it. So sections have that, so we can add things up. Again, that's more of a detailed type of thing that we wouldn't be looking at in this class, but you could just simply say the sum of the field that you have in the detail, and it would add those up. This is far more complex, but the idea is, again, we have got different sections, we're adding things up, showing things, turning them on, turning them off. That's the power of Report Writer. So the goal here today was to give you an overview, show you the different things. If you guys have used any type of report writing tool, this would be very similar to what you've used before. You can adjust the look and feel of it without having to do much coding, especially if you take an existing report and make changes to it, or copy an existing report and leave the structure the same, but put things in a different spot. That is ideal for things that you can do, and so hopefully this helped in giving you that understanding. So come to the end of our session here together. So we did just go through the report builder basics, give you an understanding of what you can't do with report builder. Have a look at see if you've got any questions. Yeah, we've got a couple here. Can anyone just install report writer and be able to make changes? So can anyone? Well, you do need in Acumatica to give a role called reports. I think it's called reports or reports writer. Let's have a quick look. So there is a security role that um, must be given in order to get that. So if I scroll down to the bottom, report designer. So you need to have that role in order to be able to go in and connect to Acumatica. It's not like anyone can just do that. They must have that role to be able to do that. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question um, on that. And next question is on what I showed in revision control. So by using revision control, again, that's someone go in there and select a different revision. You would need the report writer um, role to be able to see that revision. Otherwise, um, you would not see that additional tab in there for you to be able to choose which revision that you're looking at. So I think we did looked at the pro forma invoice. So this field here, edit report, as well as this field here, which is reported revisions, will not show up on your screen if you do not have the report writer tools. Then someone just can't go in there and select a particular version and mess things up. This wasn't the one that we were looking at. It was quotes. Yeah, so this one here. Um, and we activated and did a bunch of things you need to be a report writer to be able to do. Another question, um, installing the program. Do you do that for us? Well, no. It would be someone on your company IT. We'd provide you with the install file, but it's up to you guys to install that software onto your computers. Okay, so nothing else right now. So weekly training classes, do have a look and sign up for future classes. Um, got 23R1 launch next week, so it'll either be us or we'll direct you to the Acumatica site, but it looks like it may be us for this particular one. Then we got Dean joining us to do these classes. He'll be doing the bank deposits as well as the sales tax review at the end of March, beginning of April. Taking care of those two pieces for us. Do check out any of the classes you may have missed by going to acumaticaengineering.com/maintenance-classes, and you can see things that classes that have been held and so far, and view those on demand. Do check out our blog as well. So it looks like that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. Uh, Hopefully you have a good rest of the day and week. And those have signed up for next week. Look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.